Opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's a Monday, the beginning of another week in paradise.
Well, you know, they escaped the streets. They escaped Purchase Street. They escaped the streets.
I'll tell you, if he can get a job as a songwriter when he's done writing his column, because that was pretty good.
You know, Marc Munroe Dion's column in the Herald News last night was amazing. You have to go to the Herald News website or read it in this morning's paper. It's written to the tune of the Monster Mash. You know, so if you know that, you really have to listen to it because it is so true. The new name for the city council is the Spend It All Nine. You know, it's amazing. You know.
To spend it all nine, yeah. Well, I think that's a little. You know, there are a couple of them that actually voted against some of the spending, but some of it, parts of it. But you know, in part, you know, he hit it right on the head. You know, when he talked about the, you know, for you, the taxpayer, these escapes are not meant unless you can't pay your mortgage or you can't pay your rent. Then you can sleep in the streets. You can sleep on a street. You can sleep on a streetscape street. I mean, you know, this is classic. And, you know, it is a classic because, you know, everybody sees it except the city council apparently. They never stop spending money.
Five people on the city council.
Well,
okay, Steve Camara, Pam LeBeau, Steve Long, Sean Kadim, and Joe Camara.
Well, I can't
see nothing wrong with anything that this mayor does. He could drop a nuclear bomb on Fall River, and guess what? We'll approve it. But always remember, it's not real money because it was bonded. And as Marc Dion said in his column, he escaped the streets. It only cost $10 million. He escaped the streets. How will we pay the bill? No, your great-grandchildren are going to pay this bill.
That's right. And we've said it here before. And, you know, the thing about this is that, you know, they continue to you know, they're not going to make excuses. And you said there are five. But I think Steve Long has a legitimate excuse. He's either blind or on hallucinogenic drugs. Because he sees a Fall River that, what was that adjective he used?
A thriving metropolis.
Thriving. Well, it was actually two. Okay, it was a descriptive little. He looks at Fall River and sees a thriving metropolis. Yet, in the last week, we had Fall River again in a top five in a category, not a good category, of course, because we're never in the top anything in a good category. You know, while Cranston, Rhode Island was found as the best city to live in, Fall River was found as the fifth worst city to live in. Why? Because we have crime, we have high prices and low income, and everybody isn't it amazing? USA Today, I forgot who did this one. Who did this study?
Wall Street.
Oh, yeah, another totally ridiculous. Got people that don't know anything. The Wall Street Journal. You know, the Wall Street Journal found Fall River the fifth worst city to live in. But what's going to be the defense? Jazel's going to call a press conference. Boycott the Wall Street Journal. They're all lying. Fall River's a thriving metropolis. You know, get your head out of your derriere. We have the city council. Those five should be called the five ostriches because they have their head buried in the sand. They don't care about your money. They don't care about the fact you're scratching to make a living, that you can barely pay your rent or your mortgage, that this city is the poorest city in the state of its size. And maybe the poorest city in the state, period. Of not the 360 as the Swansea as a Swansea town council has said, but of the 351 cities and towns. Look.
You mean to tell me you're going to call a lawyer a liar?
Yeah, well, as I've always contended, I truly believe that some of the lawyers that I know, that the bar exam in Massachusetts is given in crayon, you know, and they have like cartoon pictures on it that you have to match. Because, I mean, we look at some of these people that are supposed to be lawyers, and we look at some of the decisions they make and some of the things they say. Actually, I know a couple lawyers that are basically functional illiterates. And it's true. I mean, and I won't name them because, you know, well, they don't have much of a practice anyway, but the fact is that it's still, look, Marc, Munroe, Dion highlighted again, you know, that this city and the government doesn't care. It doesn't care. And government on the whole doesn't care. It gets me to segue quickly into something that really showed again. I hope that our viewers watch local news, because last week on the local news, I think it was NBC, but it was probably on all of them, our governor, our governor of our adjoining state, that bordering state, Rhode Island, was again defending people that she hires because she hires people who she owes, who she's beholden to. She's defended them, and even though they've totally not done their job, been totally incompetent, this is not the first time that Governor Raimondo has defended it. Well, in case you haven't looked at it, there are some people that haven't gotten their taxes in almost a year. They're still waiting for last year's tax refund while they're preparing to file this year's tax refund. And the registry of motor vehicles is in total chaos. It's an absolute chaos. Why? Because it doesn't seem there's one computer system in Rhode Island that works. And this is a great example of why you people who drink Kool-Aid and don't understand that government should always be looked at very closely by the people. And Milton Friedman was right that if he gave them the Sahara Desert, we'd run out of sand. It seems Governor Raimondo hired a company that used to work in Massachusetts. And after 2 years and millions of dollars, that company was finally fired because they never did the job. And guess who hired them? Rhode Island. Rhode Island. She hired a company that Massachusetts threw out because for 2 years they drained the taxpayers' money. And what was their penalty? Nothing. They moved along to the next state, and Raimondo hired them. Why? She must know somebody, or somebody that was one of her campaign supporters must have again got her, just what we talked about on our last show, like with Mary Sahadi. Once you get a job in Fall River, you begin to get jobs in everything around here. Somerset, Diamond School Board, Housing Authority. They're like a cancer. They grow once you let them in. You got to get them out. The only way to fix this government is to change it periodically, because pay attention. They have an utter and total disregard for the taxpayer and his money. And with that, I will segue into something I know CJ wants to talk about, because he took a little trip. He took a little trip to Salem, and taxpayer money in Fall River, again, is wasted all the time on the CPA. We give $400,000. I never saw an air conditioning unit that cost $400,000, except maybe a high-rise, but not a little tiny library. But $400,000, and all the political cronies get CPA, our tax money. I was against it when we voted on it. They conned everybody into believing this thing was going to be good for the community, and they put roofs on private restaurants, and every bit of and 99% of that money has been given to politically connected hacks. That's why we are going to work our butts off to get the CPA repealed. Now, CJ, tell us about your trip where you saw CPA money used correctly by not a community like Fall River.
Well, you know, it's amazing because I went on this thing called the Candlelit Walking Tour, which is part of the Halloween celebration up in Salem, which is a week-long celebration, which generates about $2.5 million for the city in revenue. Not the little businesses, for the city. The city. I wonder what we could do at $2.5 million in Fall River. Can somebody say purple bags?
We can bond for it.
Yeah. But as we were on this walking tour, we came up to the old burial ground and the old torture ground where they used to press people. Pressing people, you put them under a door, and then you just keep putting rocks on top until their body gets crushed and they can't breathe. And it says, this area made possible, this area renovated, this area restored with the use of CPA funds. This wasn't a private entity. This wasn't a private for-profit company. This was city-owned property being maintained for their tourist communities that was generating a revenue stream for the city. Now, isn't that a good use of tax dollars?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't know why we would use taxpayers' money to create things that actually generate income to hold taxes down. Why would we do something like that in Fall River when we can bond? It's kind of like streetscapes. They use it in Miami to do what? Fix the tourist areas.
That's
so they
right.
could generate more money for the city. Now, if they inappropriately use that money, i.e., greatest example of that is Atlantic City. They've made billions of dollars with the casinos. Now the casinos are having trouble because they're opening them in Philly. But they never used the money and reinvested it in the city. The politicians took it and they gave their friends some and they kept some and they never developed it in the inner city. So they always use Atlantic City as a model of why casinos don't help the economy. It's actually an example of how government corruption can take, no matter how much money you make them, they can urinate it in a hole.
But you know, the really funny part about it was when I came back after this trip, and I had such a great time, there were a little over 40 people on this trip. And this trip was put together by the Flint Neighborhood Association. And even some of our biggest opponents, some of our most vocal opponents were there. And the one thing that all these people on this bus could agree upon was the fact that Fall River's dropping the ball here. Because we have one of the greatest items of all time, that we could utilize to generate a tourist trade, to generate traffic in Fall River. That's Lizzie Borden. The murder, the trials, the homes. We have all of that. The cemetery. I drove through Oak Grove Cemetery this morning just to go, because I figured, hey, you know, let's find out. Do you know that there were people out there this morning putting flowers on her grave? They were putting trinkets on her grave. I think DCM was coming down to clear off those items.
Or arrest them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somebody actually went out and put a huge black rose on her grave. I mean, if these people are going to do this, how about a walking tour of the cemetery? There are a lot of historic people buried in this cemetery. When you look at the fact that we could run mock trials in what is now the Children's Museum, which was the courthouse for the Lizzie Borden trial. Okay?
They got $400,000 for an air conditioner.
Yeah, it's already got the air conditioning, so we're all set there. We could actually use the courtroom, and I'm sure people like Fall River Little Theater and some of these little theater groups would love walking around Fall River for a week in period costume. Can you see that? People giving period costume tours.
You mean like Sturbridge Village?
Yes.
and Williamstown, Virginia? No, nobody's ever done that before successfully.
Right.
Fall River would never do. Let's fix up Purchase Street.
Right,
And
exactly.
put a facade on a private building. Right. No, the hell with it. We also have some other things we talked about, and actually I talked to Carlos about it. He wasn't even aware, because obviously he wasn't in this country, but we had the best soccer team in the country,
right.
and one of the best soccer teams in the world here, the Ponta Delgadas. They won a world championship, and they finished, and they won a couple of United States championships, and they finished third against professionals in a world championship tournament. One of the greatest soccer teams ever. Now, you know how popular soccer is, the women's team, and especially during American Cup, with all the soccer leagues, all the soccer moms. It's even become a term, soccer mom.
Right.
So we can't incorporate that into some kind of thing that the city runs. And now we're looking to attract tourists. We talked about softball complexes, but there are traveling softball teams that go down by the thousands to North Carolina. But see, this is the problem. All we know how to do in Fall River is give political hacks money and jobs, bond for crap that doesn't work, when we do have something to do. I mean, like you said, the Children's Museum's Lizzie Borden, they actually have the cell that's still there, I think, that she was in.
Right.
We could have a mini wax museum. You could have if you go to Gettysburg doesn't have, the town is like in the middle of, it's not a big town. But what have they got? They got a field. They've got a field that the largest battle in the Civil War took place, a battle that killed almost as many Americans as the entire Vietnam War. 50,000 Americans died at Gettysburg. And if you go to Gettysburg, there are tours of the battlefield. There are places that show you, they show you where all the places were. They have these giant, actually tables that actually move, and they move as the battle went along, and it's fascinating. I mean, I took my children there when they were not little children, but they weren't teenagers yet. They think they're 8 and 9. And history is a great thing to teach your kids. Then you go on a tour, and you can hire a guide, or you can go on a tour bus, and they show you where the Massachusetts regiments were during that battle, and all these kind of things. They take advantage of what they've got. Fall River, it's not like we're totally barren. We have Lizzie Borden, we have the Ponte Delgada, we have other things. We also have our history. Fall River's not a young community. It's not some bedroom community. We have a great textile history. It wasn't great for the people who were chained to the machines, but we still are we were a major player when we began the Industrial Revolution. All these things can be melded together into something that could attract a tourist. Maybe from who's going to visit Newport, or maybe who's going to visit the Lower Cape. Maybe they'll if you actually do advertise that enough, somebody might say, "Hey, look, we've already seen a 12-mile drive in Newport. We got another day or so around here. Is there anything we can do?" If you had brochures and say, "Hey, go see Lizzie Borden's famous. How many movies have they made?" I mean, Elizabeth Montgomery played Lizzie Borden.
That was one of the first movies, I believe.
That was one of the first movies. Yeah. And now, was it Christina Ricci played in a series?
Yep.
A mini-series?
Yep.
I mean, it's not like, it's incredible. How incompetent and how mindless the people are that run this government, because all they know how to do is fix up the street they live on, and they're not working in the best interest of the people. And for all you people that drink the Kool-Aid, go back. Look at the NBC News about Raimondo. This is what they do best. Employ their friends, give them millions of dollars, and when somebody asks, I've got to get back to this because this is the coup de grace. This is the cherry on the sundae. This is the icing on the cake. What was Governor Raimondo's answer when they told her, well, these people they've screwed everything up, and they fired him in Massachusetts? You know what she said? Oh no. Things are getting better, and we're going to hire more people. So that's their answer. They bid on this contract because they said they could do the job with their personnel. They haven't done it. They got fired in Massachusetts for not doing it and costing millions of dollars. In 2 years in Massachusetts, they got thrown out. And Governor Raimondo's answer is what government always says: give more people that we know jobs and give them more money. not fire them. You think in private industry that a company would still be on the payroll, that a year later they still don't have a computer system that can function? I don't think so. So maybe it's me, and maybe maybe that's being negative. I think that's actually being intelligent enough to realize when something doesn't work. If you shoot yourself in the head with one nail from a nail gun, you normally don't do it a second time, unless you're part of the Fall River government and they're shooting a nail gun in your head.
It's just very interesting because when you look at a lot of this, you have to laugh and
or cry.
Yeah, or cry. But imagine, if you will. I feel like I'm doing Rocky Horror now. Imagine, if you will. Hey, it's Halloween, right?
That's right. Well, we could be doing a Twilight Zone.
That's true. Imagine, if you will, a week-long Lizzie Borden event in Fall River. Say the week of the murders. Okay? You have a recreation going on at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast. You have people walking around all of downtown in period costumes. You have restaurants that are opening because guess what? There's a lot of crowd there. Okay? You have decent trolleys. Not the crap we have right now that they don't maintain, that they let sit out in the weather, in the rain and the snow, and they look like they've been beat up with a stick a couple of hundred times. But decently maintained trolleys that take people around the city. They do walking tours in the Highlands, walking tours up Rock Street, walking tours up at Oak Grove Cemetery, taking people around during that week. Maybe you have a carnival or two. You want to believe in a 4-block area in Salem, they had 2 carnivals. They had a huge carnival at one end, which had, I don't know what they call that, the gameway or whatever, where they had the games and the food, and they had the huge carousel and the Ferris wheel and all these little rides. And then on the other side of that 4-week area, they had a smaller carnival which had all little rides for the little kids, so they didn't get lost. It was a very family-friendly environment. You had haunted houses on like 3 in one block. You had them on every street corner. You had people walking around in costume. 1 million people a day. And it was quiet in respect to crime and problems. Everybody was having a good time. And it was a great moneymaker for those private businesses that owned these haunted houses, that owned these walking tour companies. And they really made it stand out. And these walking tours got you involved. At this building here, the treasurer of the city hung himself in that room up in the corner. And at night, when you take a picture, you can sometimes see his face pressed against the glass. What happens? Everybody runs out in the street and they're all taking pictures of the window. And then, of course, you get 1 or 2 people say, I got his face. Oh, I got a side of his face. I got his, yeah. So people got excited. And what did they do when they got excited? Because guess when that walking tour came back? I thought it was at Disney. A little trinket shop selling garbage, selling stuff for people to buy. Flashlights, candles, you name it, they were selling it all. That's the free market system. That is how you develop the economy for a city. Not spending $10 million on Purchase Street where you live. That's how you develop it. Okay.
Yeah, and if we had something like that, CJ, which were all good ideas, and it was in your weekend flush, you went through, a whole litany of things. But they say when they go, these are positive things. These are suggestions that we made that we just dropped the ball. What are we going to? We hired this marketing company that they're not from Fall River. They don't know anything about Fall River history. I'll bet you nobody that we've hired to market Fall River for tourism had any idea about the Ponte Delgadas. You can go on Wikipedia and go and Google the Ponte Delgadas from soccer team, and you will get a whole bunch of information about how good they were. I happen to be fortunate enough, my father was friendly with two players who played on those championship teams. And, these are the kind of things that we dropped the ball on. Now they're building a complex, indoor sports complex in Tiverton. They've built one in, they're building them all over. Was it I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we talked about, at the beginning of our show, 4 years ago, I talked about indoor sports complexes and about softball tournaments that are run in North Carolina that bring thousands and thousands of people to the middle of nowhere in North Carolina and generate tremendous amounts of revenue. And that fact that I used to have to drive all the way to Bridgewater every weekend to allow my fiance's daughter to play softball indoors. And it costs a lot of money. And you had to go to Bridgewater. And why? Why? It's just Fall River never stops spending money on things that don't help Fall River. And you know why? It's because we elect people who don't require the mayor to come up with something that's actually going to help. Instead we have councilors like Steve Long, who will say he sees a thriving metropolis when he walks in Fall River. And that's probably after he walked out of one of the bars, because I don't see it. And you know, we've got these other people who like to stand on their little soapboxes and preach how they're doing good for Fall River when they're only doing good for themselves. Doing good for the city of Fall River is something that's gonna benefit the entire city of Fall River, not your own inclusion park, or not your own street and your friend's business getting a new facade. It's endeavors like this. And if they begin to make money, you could have some type of facility where you actually had these things housed in one unit. I went to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. I donated some pictures that my father took when he was part of the first military units to liberate Buchenwald in Germany during the Second World War. And I donated those pictures to the Holocaust Museum. And in the Holocaust Museum, they actually have these, the train, the cattle cars, basically, that they stuffed the people in when they were taking them to the concentration camps. And I'll tell you, it is an amazingly sobering experience to walk into one of those cars and then look at how many people they stuffed in those cars, because they were the size of closets, basically. And then they have other replicas and some original stuff from the concentration camps. And it is a very, very sobering experience to go there and really witness man's inhumanity to man. And like Mark Twain said, Samuel Clemens, man is the only animal that can blush and the only one that needs to.
You know, yeah. Chip, the coup de grace of this whole thing, the cherry, as you put it, on the sundae, was that several years ago, Salem was attempting to build a Lizzie Borden museum. And the city of Fall River, or its agents or businesses, filed an injunction and got it to stop them from doing it. Now, if Salem wanted to do this, obviously it's a moneymaker. Now, this was several years ago. We still haven't done anything with it. Yet the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum on 2nd Street keeps making national news. Hello, 6th floor. We're over here. We are over here. Tourism is over here, sir. Can you see us?
Yeah. No, but there you go. We've already got it, and it is a nationally recognized issue. So, you know, again, read Dion's column. It is fantastic. Sing the song, because we were singing it before we went on the air. Stay angry, because they never stop spending our money.
And we'll see you Wednesday. Have a great day.